I didn't realize how much of my life had been negotiated until the day it stopped. Even the wedding had terms, not spoken like contracts, but implied in glances, in who my father chose to greet first, in the way my mother held my arm a little too tightly before walking me down the aisle, as if proximity could still redirect me. They didn't shout when they said it. No inheritance, no trust fund. My father's voice was level, almost administrative, like he was finalizing a decision already approved somewhere higher. It wasn't anger. That would have been easier to respond to. It was removal. I remember waiting for something louder, some crack in his tone that would prove this was temporary, but there wasn't one. Just a pause, then the soft clink of his glass against the table as he stepped away. I stood there in a dress that suddenly felt like it belonged to a different version of me. When I turned back, my husband was watching me, not concerned, not triumphant, just steady. "We don't need it," he said. There was no emphasis on the words, no performance, just a statement, like he was reminding me of something I already knew but hadn't practiced believing. At the time, I thought it was optimism, maybe even denial. The first few months were quieter than I expected, not harder, just quieter. There were no dramatic adjustments, no visible struggle. We didn't downgrade our lives in any obvious way. If anything, it felt like we had stepped out of something rather than fallen from it. Still, I kept waiting for a bill that couldn't be paid, waiting for him to admit that my father had been right, waiting for the moment where love stopped feeling like enough. But it never arrived. What did arrive instead were smaller shifts. I started noticing how decisions were made in our home, without tension, without leverage. There was no invisible scale measuring who contributed more, who deserved more, say. I wasn't used to that. I didn't realize how much of my previous life had been shaped by invisible scoring. Then, 6 months in, my mother called not to apologize, to invite a formal event, a gallery opening tied to one of my father's foundations. The kind of place where conversations were curated and people were introduced in layers of relevance. "You should come," she said. "It's important." She didn't mention my husband at first. Then, after a pause, "You can bring him." It wasn't reconciliation. It was observation. I almost declined. But something in me wanted to see it again. Not for approval, but for clarity. We arrived without announcement. No one stopped us. No one welcomed us either. That part hadn't changed. The room moved the same way it always had. Quiet power passing between people who didn't need to raise their voices. My father stood near the center, speaking to a group that leaned in just slightly, signaling interest without submission. He saw me, acknowledged me with a nod that felt more like recognition than warmth. His gaze shifted to my husband, briefly, then away. Assessment complete. I felt it again, that old reflex to explain, to justify, to somehow bridge the gap he had already decided was unworthy of crossing. But my husband didn't move toward him. Instead, he glanced around the room, then checked his watch, a small gesture, almost forgettable, except it changed something. Within minutes, the atmosphere shifted, not loudly, but decisively. A few people near the entrance straightened. Staff adjusted their posture. Someone from the organizing team moved quickly across the floor, speaking in low, urgent tones. Then a man I recognized, one of the senior curators, approached us directly. Not my father, U.S. His attention was fixed, respectful in a way that didn't ask for permission. "We've been expecting you," he said to my husband. No confusion, no hesitation, just fact. My husband nodded, like this was routine. They spoke briefly, logistics, timing, something about a presentation being ready. I didn't catch all of it. I was too focused on the shift happening around us. It wasn't dramatic. No one gasped. No one stared openly. But conversation slowed. Eyes lingered half a second longer than before. Recognition, recalibrating in real time. My father approached then, not quickly, but with intention. This time, when he looked at my husband, there was no dismissal in it. There was calculation. "I wasn't aware you were involved with this project," he said. My husband met his gaze, calm as ever. "I don't usually attach my name to them," he replied. This one required a bit more oversight. Still no performance. No correction of tone, just information. The curator returned, addressing my husband again, confirming that everything was ready, that the board was waiting. That word carried weight in rooms like this. My father heard it. I saw the moment it landed, not as shock, but as adjustment. A quiet reordering of assumptions he hadn't realized he'd made. No apology followed, no sudden warmth, but something loosened, not between them. Within me, for months I had been holding on to the idea that this moment would need to prove something, that there would be a clear reversal, a visible shift in who held power. But standing there, I realized it didn't matter. The room had already adjusted, not because we demanded it, because reality made space for it. I looked at my husband, who was now being pulled into a discussion about the evening's program, his role unfolding in ways I had never thought to question before. And I understood, finally, what he meant that day. "We don't need it." It wasn't defiance, it was perspective. My father spoke to me again before we left. Nothing dramatic, just, "You seem well." I nodded. "I am." There was more that could have been said, there always is, but we didn't say it. Not everything needs to be resolved to be understood. As we walked out, I didn't feel like I had won anything. There was no victory in it, just a quiet certainty that I hadn't lost what I thought I had, and that was enough.